Great. Thank you and good morning. Great to be here, home stage, Sweden. That doesn't happen often. My name is Liisa Smits. I started Ignitia now a decade ago. It feels like forever. But I'm still, according to at least UN definition, included in the youth, so that's good. I wanted to run you through my journey. I started as a visiting researcher at University of Washington and worked with one of NASA's satellites. So this is in the fields of physics. And one day realized that it is really weird that across the globe we have a belt around the equator, which we call the tropics, that still didn't have a reliable weather forecast. Such a basic but really needed information, especially if you're into farming. Looking a little bit about this problem, we figured that there was a accuracy problem really in the forecasts. Today, when we looked over West Africa, we found out that about 39% of the forecasts were accurate only. This means that as a farmer, you actually win by doing the opposite from what the forecast tells you. This was striking, so I realized that I could get a group of researchers together and we could start working on this. 5 years later, we had a solution in mind. Starting in West Africa, where yields are tremendously low, where only 20% of the yield potential today is harvested, we looked at what can we do about this? Well, what we've looked at was really the yield gap. So imagine like having a yield of 100%. That's when you do everything right, when weather is timed very well with all your activities. And what is then causing this drop from 100% to 20% in sub-Saharan Africa? Well, about 25 to 30% of this is due to pests, diseases, and weed. There's a mass industry out there for it. However, 20 to 80% of that yield gap is due to weather. Some of that weather we can, of course, not do anything about. That is when it comes to extreme floods or, for that matter, droughts. That is something for insurance to take care of in future. But the everyday weather, here we have a huge possibility in agriculture where small-scale farmers really can take action and do something different. What we did was to launch, let me see here. Oh, that's strange. There's something funny happening with the presentations today. What we saw was that there would be a big demand, in food for future. And this is something that is more than true, specifically than for sub-Saharan Africa, where to 2050, to believe statistics, the demand will increase by 70% in the region. Not going to talk so much about what could be done better. I think that previous speakers have addressed this a lot. But where we saw that we really wanted to make a difference was not only in the forecasting, but then also looking at the practices of how farmers are doing their agriculture and what can we do differently to really get this yield increased. So the first thing we did was really to launch a weather forecast that would be much more accurate. We realized pretty quickly that for illiterate farmers, it would make no sense to go and send a text message, right? So we thought about, okay, let's go creative. There must be other solutions. Maybe we can send out symbols. And we thought, oh, what a great idea. We really were up to something. And then we started sending out these symbols that looked like a sun. And when the farmers got it, they looked at it and like, this looks like a poisonous spider. So, okay, it didn't turn out to be symbols because symbols were just not intuitive. This is something we have learned in school, how we interpret. So in order to find something cross-cultural that would work on scale, where we didn't need to have boots on the ground to explain for every single farmer what we really wanted to get through the information, we did 121 different trials before we found this one way to get the message through. We figured out that every small-scale farmer had access to simple phone, a feature phone, not a smartphone, nothing extraordinary. They could receive a text message. And even if they couldn't read or write, they could definitely recognize a word. So by placing these words, on a daily text message, farmers could then start in the beginning to recognize the word rain. And if it would be in the first sentence, it meant that it would rain today. If it would be in the second sentence, the word dry, they would know that tomorrow is predicted to be dry. We simplified everything and threw out all kinds of other parameters of a weather forecast, such as humidity and temperature, because farmers simply didn't know what kind of action points to do. But by experience, they had a very good understanding how rain affected their yields and their actions out in the farm. So this was something that we worked on, and after seeing that it did work for a number of farmers to start to look at these keywords, and by understanding that there was always one person in the village at least that could read and write and could explain, what other words meant, we have now seen research made by third parties. I think this was GIZ that did it lastly in Nigeria last year, that over 95% of the farmers that we work with, after 180 days, had learned all the 7 keywords we're using. Very scalable model. We partner today with all the major telecommunication companies in the region of West Africa, where we have done a deal where farmers can access the service through a short code. By then getting into a USSD menu, something that we used maybe back here in the 90s, but it's a little menu, it looks like a text message, it feels like a text message, it's not a text message, it's for free. And by that, they can sign up to a service and from there on, start subscribing to it. They would get a text message every day on their phone describing this day's and tomorrow's weather forecast. And by that, know if they would go out to the farm, make decisions such as, should I today hire, the labor? So, for example, getting in the village to help me with weeding. Or will it rain today? Because in that case, the village people will sit under a mango tree and watch out the field, but still demand to be paid by the end of the day because they did show up, right? So these kind of decisions became essential for farmers. And this is where we really could help out. In order to make it affordable, we made a deal with a telco to say that our text messages should always be cost under the actual price of a text message if the farmer would, for example, send a text message to somebody else. So it should be very, very affordable and also be less than 1% of the total investment a farmer makes on a yearly base in their agriculture. As you know, inputs are really expensive for a farmer, especially the fertilizer tends to be the major cost that they need to borrow money from the village or from the family in order to afford. But it's also really, really high risk because imagine applying the fertilizer out in the field and then it rains heavily. Everything washes away. In a matter of 2 hours, you have lost your whole investment to the drain, or best case, to the neighbor. So what we really try to do is to help smallholder farmers to make the right decision at the right time. I can give you another example. We know that around harvest time, it's super important to do 2 things right. One is to time the harvesting itself, because imagine if you just harvested and have all these produce laying out in the field and it would start rain heavily. Well, the quality will be impaired. You will start to get mold, aflatoxins, and other kinds of things happening in it before you have had the chance to really take it in, dry it, and make sure that you have captured the nutrition in the produce. The other thing that happens is specifically for different kinds of crops that need a drying process post-harvest. And also here we believe that we can help out with showing what kind of gaps the farmers have so they can time their drying process to a gap where it will be dry. Very shortly, Today, we actually, since I did this presentation, we have today 1.35 million farmers subscribing to the text messages every day. We are present in 6 countries in West Africa, namely Ghana, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Mali, Ivory Coast, and Cameroon. The farmers, they pay for the text messages themselves. We also do a lot of partnerships with international organizations in order to spread the awareness of this service existing, but also to get some kind of validation of what does this mean for the farmer. We are now in 12 external evaluations that has been done. We had 2 years ago a UC Berkeley researcher that came over to have a look at, talk with just random farmers that had subscribed to the service to see what were the actual effects. 6 months later, she came out of the field and let us know that she had measured a 54% yield increase compared with farmers that did not have same kinds of information. This translates really into, in this case, a $480 extra in income over a season. This really means, in practice, that we can move somebody today, or yesterday, earning $1.9 per day to a range of $3.1 per day. If you have read the book of Hans Rosling, you would then know that, this is really moving people from extreme poverty to a level 2 income, where you can start to put in money into, fixing that leaking roof, sending your children to school, getting that bicycle so you can get faster to the farm. More than that, of course, it does affect, another 6 people per text message that we get out, as all farmers have a family. And interestingly enough, it's not only the farmers that use the weather forecast. For example, I just recently heard an example where the kids, they would always read the forecast because they would like to know the day before if they had to get up early in the morning. Because in case it rained, they did not need to sweep the grounds outside of the hut. And because of that, they could sleep in. So there might be other additional benefits. We are now looking at, how can we really get this spread? How can we get from these 1.3 million farmers to the 500 million farmers that would need the information? Later this year, we're going to launch in Latin America, in Brazil, with these forecasts. We have had researchers from Uppsala University that has showed that our accuracy in weather forecast outperforms totally of what has been there before. And I think that this is a start of a scaling journey, and we would love to be, a part of the work that you do as well. We understand that we are only solving a small part of the problem of a very complex agriculture chain, but this could really be a frog leap, a first step to get things moving. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Liisa. And once again, do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? Oh, plenty, I think. Sara was first there, yes. And yes. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sara Gräslund with SLU Global, the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. Thank you very much for the wonderful work that you do, and thank you also to previous presenters. I have a question here about the national, local, and also regional Met services, because you are basically competing with them, and in the long run, I think we all want to have them as strong actors. And how do you relate to them, and what possibilities do you see to work together with them?
Right. Collaboration, not competition. Really, what we can do together is much stronger than each of us can do on our own. I think that Met agencies today have focused the last 30 years a lot on getting the measurements right, getting those weather stations out there, getting perhaps that radar that they could never afford in place so they could get, information around flights in, so we could have like safe landings in this country. Now, if we can also collaborate around the weather forecasting, wouldn't that be fantastic? We have started discussions, for example, in Nigeria. We are very close now. We have already signed an MOU and see how we can collaborate together. It's a very, very long journey, to get this to a collaboration. Not only does it need scientific proof, but it's also a matter of like just human nature. It might feel like a competition that we come in, but the way we see it is that we would love to collaborate.
Okay, we had some other questions as well.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sagnik from, I'm studying Masters in Sustainable Development in Uppsala University, and I come from India. And this problem is quite prevalent in India, where the farmers don't know about the weather, and that causes a huge problem with the harvesting period, and also causes inflation in the prices of vegetables or fruits. So I was thinking whether that was a result that you had seen in African countries where you're doing this project, that is the price of those vegetables are not that inflating due to this service that you are providing, because the farmers are now much more, they have the knowledge of the weather changes happening frequently. So I was wondering whether that was a result in the market price stability, something like that.
Right, that's a really interesting question that you have there. We were also thinking about it more like on a large economic scale. What would the effects be? Would, for example, the price volatility on the world markets start to differ depending on that people are doing well, and because of that there would be extra supply but not extra demand. What we have seen so far is when we have gone in and done project together with partners on a smaller scale, is that we have often seen a much more steady supply, higher but steady supply. The steady supply is really a win-win for everybody. Both the buyers, the purchasers, such as the manufacturer, in case it's about cotton or about sisal, but also in the food processing industry, because predictability allows for a stability also, and allows for the manufacturer to plan better around their operations, and because of that push out the food on the market.
Okay, thank you. I think actually we have to keep going in the program, but it's great to see that so many people are interested in to hear more from you, Liisa. So please grab her during the lunch and have conversations with her then. And of course, the SIANI bag before leaving the stage. And thank you so much.
Thank you.